Hello friends, Namaskar, this is Sanjay. Welcome to part 6 of this video series, and today we will be talking about the concepts of child-centered and progressive education, which is the 6th topic in the CTET CDP syllabus. In this series, we will cover only those topics which are important from your exam point of view. We will start with answering the question, what is child-centered education? We will look at what are contextual learning, meaningful learning, rote learning, authentic tasks, progressive education. We will also look at the various types of progressive education and also read about some of the progressive education theories. We will also see what do the National Education Policy and the National Curriculum Framework say about progressive classrooms. We will end this video with some sample questions from previous question papers. So let's get started. If you look at any classroom, the teaching learning process that is happening can be either teacher-centric, subject-centric or child-centric. Teacher-centric is where teacher is the most important factor in the entire process because the teacher decides what has to be taught, at what pace, what speed, and the teacher does things as per his or her comfort. In subject-centric, the subject is the most important factor and the importance here is given to completing the syllabus within the given time and as it is prescribed in the textbooks. In child-centric, the child is the most important factor here. It is okay if the teacher has to change his teaching methodology. It is okay if the syllabus is not completed. The most important factor here is that the child should understand what is being taught. So if the child has to understand what is being taught in the classroom, the best way of achieving that is learning by doing. Because if you hear something, you'll forget it very soon. If you see something, you will remember it for a longer time. If you do something, then you will understand it. So the keywords when it comes to a child-centric classroom are hands-on learning, experiential learning, collaborative learning, or project-based learning. While designing a child-centric classroom or a child-centric teaching learning process, everything is focused on the child. The teacher, the curriculum, projects and activities, community, family, location and timings, facilities, all of them are focused on ensuring that the child understands what is being taught in the classroom. And the child is also not a passive absorber of the knowledge that is being given to him. The child also participates in this entire process actively. And the curriculum and the projects and activities are also designed for maximizing the hands-on learning aspect, that is, maximizing the learning by doing. So, to summarize what is child-centered or child-centric education, child is at the center. That is, the child's needs are the primary criteria and both the teacher and the children are active participants in the teaching and learning process. And learning is engaging, hands-on, experiential, and it should be a fun activity. Right? And there should be an understanding that every child is different. That is, you cannot expect the same teaching and learning methodology to work for every child. So this statement has to be kept in mind by the teacher and everybody who's involved in the teaching and learning process. And learning is a social activity with lots of collaborative learning in the classroom and outside the classroom as well. And there should be a focus on relevant and contextual learning. And it is not just about reading what is there in the textbooks and covering the syllabus, but the child's social, emotional, physical, linguistic, and intellectual development is also given equal importance in a child-centric classroom. We keep using this phrase contextual learning quite frequently in the CDP syllabus. So what is this contextual learning all about? Well, learning that is relevant and is actually part of the child's actual life. That is contextual learning. In contextual learning, the teachers present the information in such a way that the students are able to connect with it. That is, they are able to construct meaning. That is, they are able to convert this information into useful knowledge using their own experiences. For example, if I'm talking about fruits in a classroom, about the fruits that children should eat regularly, and I show them this picture, then how many students do you think will be able to identify what this is? Right? This is called a dragon fruit, and this is quite rarely available in India. So this would be a wrong example to give in a classroom. This is not contextual. However, if I use this picture, then this is something that almost all the students will be able to identify very easily because they are seeing this in their actual life regularly. So contextual learning is where the learning is something that is connected to the actual life of the student. The student should be able to relate to it, understand it, because he or she has experienced it or will experience it. Now, let us look at the difference between meaningful learning and rote learning. In grade 3 and 4, if you teach about triangles to a bunch of students, and in grade 5, you start teaching them about how to calculate the area of a triangle. Now, they can connect this new information, how to calculate the area of a triangle, with their previous knowledge of triangles, and they are able to understand things in a contextual manner because they already know what is a triangle. And now they are calculating the area of a triangle. So it is contextual understanding. And this is meaningful learning. However, in any class, if you suddenly introduce a concept, for example, trigonometry is introduced in some classroom, and students are told that this is sine theta, cos theta, this is tan theta, and you have to memorize a lot of things. Now, students don't know what are these all about, right? Where do we use these cos theta, sine theta, tan theta? So, for the sake of clearing some exams, children will definitely memorize these concepts and they will write about them in the exam. But they may not have actually understood what are we doing here. Why do we use this sine theta, cos theta, tan theta, and where do we use trigonometry in real life? So if you are memorizing something without actually understanding where do we use it and connecting it with something in real life, that is rote learning. Another term that we use frequently in CDP is authentic tasks or authentic learning activities. In fact, almost every year you'll see one question on authentic tasks or authentic learning activities. Now, what are these authentic tasks all about? Well, authentic tasks are real world tasks where the children can apply what they have learned in the class. That is, they can apply the theory into some practical thing in real life, and they can connect the theory to situations in real life. And the children continue to learn more in a setting that is more relevant to them. For example, in a classroom, you are teaching children about the concept of money. So they have just learned the theoretical aspect. However, after you teach them in the classroom, if you give them some money and you send them to the market or send them to the shop and ask them to buy something, then they get to experience this in real life. They get to understand how do we use money for shopping in real life. So that way, authentic tasks or authentic learning activities are those activities or those tasks which children can actually practice in real life. Now that we understand what is a child-centric classroom or child-centric education, we have understood what is meaningful learning, and we have seen what is contextual learning. Now we can very easily answer the question, what is progressive education? Because progressive education is nothing but a combination of child-centric education, meaningful learning, and contextual learning. All the important theoretical points and definitions about progressive education are listed on this slide. You can pause this video here and read through all of them one by one. Because progressive education is nothing but a combination of child-centric classroom, meaningful learning, and contextual learning. We have covered whatever is important in the previous slides. So all this is essentially a summary of what we have learned so far. So you can pause this video and read through all the points for the sake of a revision. Progressive education has been divided into three kinds. We can call them humanistic methods, constructivist methods, and Montessori method. Now in the humanistic method, you are trying to develop a whole child. That is, rather than just focusing on what is given in the textbooks and what is given in the syllabus, you are looking at other aspects of development as well. You are focusing on the emotional development, the social development, and even the physical development of the child. The idea here is to build a better human being and not just an expert. In the constructivist view, the idea is that learners construct their knowledge through various modes. So this can be cognitive constructivism or social constructivism. So here you are trying to provide the learners with all the tools and the opportunities and the facilities that they need to be able to construct their own knowledge. And in the Montessori method, rather than forcing students to learn something that you are trying to teach them, you are going to use the students' own interests and inclinations to gently guide them towards what you are trying to teach them. So this requires some special training methods, and Montessori method therefore uses some specially designed classrooms, and even the teachers are specially trained in the Montessori method. Coming to the various theories on progressive education, the first and probably the most popular one that we will look at was the one developed by Maria Montessori, and the Montessori method is actually named after her. Now, Maria Montessori was an Italian physician and an educator, and she was of the belief that children are naturally eager for knowledge. That is, children naturally want to learn a lot of things. So, in her method, the classroom is designed in such a way, and even the teachers are trained in such a way that the natural interests and the inclinations of the children are used to gently guide them towards what we want to teach them. So, the formal teaching methods that are used in the other methods are not used here, which is why there is special training that is given for the teachers also in the Montessori method. The next theory that we will look at was developed by Friedrich Froebel. Friedrich Froebel was a German educator who is famous for inventing the concept of kindergarten, which is now famous world over. This is the KG class that we use in India as well. And in his theory, play and controlled self-activity are very, very essential for the development of children, because he was of the opinion that while playing, children actively construct their understanding. Whatever they are seen or experienced in the world around them, during play, they can utilize that information and actively construct knowledge out of it. And the other unique aspect about Froebel's theory is that he not only focused on the academic development of children, but he also emphasized the physical, emotional, mental, social, and other aspects of development as well. The next theory that we will look at was developed by John Dewey. Dewey was an American philosopher, he was a psychologist and an educational reformer as well. Dewey says that the progressive education system developed as a result of the discontent with the traditional education system, because the traditional education system tries to impose adult standards, adult subject matter and adult methodologies on children, and it doesn't work effectively. He says that progressive education must be child-centric and it should have a lot of socially engaging learning experiences, because children learn a lot through these social interactions or collaborations. And he says that these experiences and even the material that is being provided to children under the progressive education system should be developmentally appropriate for young children. That is, you should not try to use the same adult standards or adult subject matter or adult methodologies on children. For example, the textbooks that are meant for adults are usually very dry. They have very small print and they don't have any pictures, because adults are very comfortable in reading and understanding such textbooks. Whereas the textbooks meant for children are developmentally appropriate. That is, these textbooks have large print, they are very colorful, they have a lot of pictures, because if we impose adult standards and adult subject matter and try to give the same kind of textbooks to children, then they will get disinterested or they get bored with the textbooks very soon. So that is how we are using some of John Dewey's concepts even today in our classrooms. Next, let us look at the theory developed by John Locke. John Locke was an English philosopher, thinker and a physician. And he is famous for developing the concept of tabula rasa. So you have to remember this, because we see questions asking us who developed the concept of tabula rasa or what did John Locke develop. So tabula rasa is something that you should remember. Now tabula rasa means blank tablet or blank slate. So he says that people learn primarily from external forces. That is, when a child is born, the brain of the child or the mind of the child is like a tabula rasa, that is a blank slate or a blank tablet. And because of the various experiences that the child is getting, the various interactions that happen, the trainings or the education that the child is getting, there are marks which are developing on this blank slate or the blank tablet. And that is how a child will learn. That is, through various interactions that happen, there are impressions which happen and the child starts to understand all these complex ideas through association and reflection. So it is a gradual filling up of the tablet. So remember tabula rasa and John Locke. Next, let us look at the theory developed by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who was a European philosopher, writer and a composer. He theorized that all children are perfectly designed organisms. That is, when children are born, they are all born perfect and all of them have the capability to develop into perfect adults or virtuous adults. And he says that if children get the right kind of atmosphere, the right kind of developmental opportunities, then all of them will become perfect adults or virtuous adults. But some of them fail to do so because of the bad influence of the corrupt society around them. Therefore, he advocated that if children are taken away from the regular society and they are kept in a special place or a separate place, such as a country home, and they are given a specific type of environment and they are exposed only to the good things, and they get all the proper developmental aids or they get all the proper developmental opportunities, then they will develop into virtuous adults or perfect adults, after which they can be reintroduced back into the society. In a way, if you look at the concept of boarding schools, they seem to be based on Rousseau's ideas, because in a boarding school, you are taking children away from their regular families. That is, you are taking children away from their homes and you are placing them in a boarding school where they are exposed to a proper environment throughout the year. And the expectation is that they will be conditioned to become good students or good human beings. Therefore, maybe the concept of boarding school is based on Jean-Jacques Rousseau's ideas. The last theory that we will look at today was developed by Carl Rogers. Now, Carl Rogers was a psychologist and a psychotherapist, and he was also one of the most important proponents of the humanistic approach of progressive education. Now, he says that learning can be classified into two main types, cognitive and experiential. He says cognitive learning is nothing but the academic or the theoretical learning that is given through textbooks in most schools. And he says that this is not very effective. And he emphasized more on the experiential learning aspect. Now, there is one interesting experiment that I remember reading about, wherein scientists placed one computing device. It was a kiosk which had a monitor and a computer inside it, and it had a keyboard and a mouse, which could be operated by some children. Right? So they took this kiosk and they kept it in an area with low income families around it. And they didn't give any instructions. It was just a kiosk which was left in a proper open place, and it was connected and it was working. Right? And they saw that children would come there, and they were very curious about what is this device. They tried to operate it and they tried to learn from it. They tried to interact with it. Now, without any instructions, over a period of time, children were able to explore that device. They were able to figure out what all they could do with it. They learned how to play games with it. They learned how to access the internet in it. So that's how, without any specific instructions, children were able to learn a lot of things just because they had access to a device. And this says that if the learning is self-initiated, because children were interested in learning things by themselves, right? So if it is self-initiated, it is very, very effective. And he says that because of the personal involvement, that is because children are not just passively receiving information, because they are actively involved in this teaching and learning experience, the learning is more effective. And the evaluation of how well the learner is learning something or not learning something is also done by the learner himself, because if the child is actually doing something, then the child knows whether I'm doing well or not doing well. So the evaluation also happens by the learner. And there is a pervasive effect, because we are talking about applied and practical experiences. This is not theoretical knowledge which can be forgotten very easily, because the children are doing it hands-on and they are personally involved in it. So they tend to remember that for a much longer time. So that is a pervasive effect he talks about. And in his theory, he says that the role of the teacher is to make sure that there is a positive climate or a good atmosphere for the children to learn. Right? And he should clarify what is it that the children are trying to learn, or what is the purpose of this teaching learning exercise. So he should clarify the purpose, and the teacher should make sure that all the required resources are made available to the students. And he should also balance the intellectual and emotional components. That is, if you just leave it to the children, then they will just play games for the entire day. Right? So the teacher should make sure that the academic part and the emotional part, that is the fun part, are equally balanced. And the teacher should share feelings and thoughts with the learners to make sure that they have somebody to talk to so that they can share their experiences. But the teacher should not be dominating. So that was Carl Rogers' theory. What is the connection between the National Education Policy and the NCF, that is the National Curriculum Framework, and progressive classrooms? Well, the NEP and the NCF are specifically trying to move the Indian education system away from traditional classrooms and towards progressive classrooms. Because in traditional classrooms, it is all teacher centric and the curriculum is also very rigid. Whereas the NCF and the NEP recommend a more learner centric approach and a flexible curriculum. And Traditional classrooms are theory focused, whereas progressive classrooms are experiential and hands-on. And in a traditional classroom, the teacher will direct and take all the decisions, whereas in a progressive classroom, the learners are also participating in the decisions. In a traditional classroom, parents are not included, whereas in a progressive classroom, there is an understanding that parents also play a very important role in the education and development of children. So they are also included in the process. In a traditional classroom, the students will passively receive information, whereas in a progressive classroom, there is active participation by both the teachers and the students. And in a traditional classroom, the learning happens within the four walls of the classroom, whereas in a progressive system, the learning happens in a wider social context outside the classroom as well. And in traditional classrooms, there is single disciplinary focus. For example, previously the subjects used to be like science, maths, biology, social studies, whereas a multidisciplinary focus means that now we see subjects like EVS, which is a combination of multiple subjects like science and social sciences, right? And in a traditional classroom, exposure to concepts happens in a linear way. That is, after chapter 1, you'll study chapter 2. After chapter 2, you'll go to chapter 3. Whereas in a progressive classroom, there is contextual exposure. That is, as and when children get exposed to something in real life, they also look at the theoretical aspect of that. Therefore, there is contextual exposure to concepts, not just following a linear way as mentioned in the syllabus. And in a traditional classroom, there are the traditional periodical assessments like the weekly test, monthly test, and the annual test. Whereas in a progressive classroom, we are looking at continuous and comprehensive evaluation. And finally, in a traditional classroom, there is just one approach for all learners. That is, we say this one size should fit all students. Whereas in a progressive classroom, there is an understanding that every learner is different and unique. Therefore, the teaching and learning methodology has to take into account that each children will learn at a different pace or in a different way. Next, let us solve some sample questions from previous question papers. First question is, which of the following is not a feature of child-centered education? Now the first statement is, it makes learning interesting and meaningful. This is child-centric. It provides complete freedom to the child to grow naturally. Definitely child-centric. Growth of the child is a priority. That is, the growth of the child is the most important aspect here. This is also definitely child-centric. Now, the second statement says it stresses on the timely completion of syllabus. If you remember, we discussed the subject-centric or the syllabus-centric approach, where the importance is given to making sure that syllabus is completed within the allotted time. So this is not child-centric, it is subject-centric. Therefore, this is the answer here. Which of the following will foster creativity among learners? In the sense, which of these options will help in the development of creativity among learners? Teaching the students the practical value of good education. If you are teaching students what is the practical aspect of the theory that they are learning in school, it is good for education, it makes for meaningful learning. But this does not have anything to do with creativity. Emphasizing the achievement goals from the beginning of school life. So if you are training students on what they have achieved, what they should achieve, this also is good for meaningful learning. However, this does not have anything to do with creativity. The last one, coaching students for good marks in examinations. Definitely nothing to do with creativity. So the second option, which says that providing opportunities to question and to nurture the innate talents of every learner. Now, if you allow students to question whenever they are learning anything, because they will have some doubts, they will have some creative thoughts, they will have some questions. So if you allow them to ask their questions and answer these questions, this is definitely encouraging creativity. And we also believe that every learner is different and every learner will have some innate talents or inborn talents. So if you are nurturing those innate or inborn talents, this is definitely fostering creativity. Therefore, option 2 is the correct answer. Which of the following is a feature of progressive education? Now, let's look at all the incorrect answers. Instruction based solely on prescribed textbooks. So here we are talking about a subject-centric approach because there is no flexibility on the curriculum. The instruction is solely based on textbooks and there is nothing that is being taught outside the textbooks. Therefore, this is not progressive education. Emphasis on scoring good marks in the examination. This again is subject-oriented. This is not progressive education. And frequent tests and examinations. This is definitely not progressive education. So the first one, which says that the timetable is flexible and the seating arrangement is also flexible, which means that there is better collaboration within the classroom and there is flexibility for the children to learn. Some children may learn fast, some children may learn a little slower. So the timetable is also flexible. Therefore, the first option is a feature of progressive education. In the progressive model of education as implemented by CBSE, socialization of children is done in such a way so as to expect them to do what? That is, which of the following is the socialization model that is suggested or prescribed by CBSE? Give up time-consuming social habits and learn how to score good grades. CBSE definitely is not saying that children should give up their social habits or socialization and focus only on good grades or marks. Therefore, this is incorrect. Prepare themselves to conform to the rules and regulations of the society without questioning. CBSE is definitely not saying that children should not be allowed to question. And if we are preparing students to accept the rules and regulations without questioning, then we are preparing slaves. We are not preparing good human beings, because children should be allowed to question everything around them. Only then either they'll be able to understand why things are being done in a specific way, or very often children probably can suggest a better way of doing things. Therefore, children should be allowed to question. Therefore, this is not something that is being suggested by CBSE. Accept what they are offered by the school irrespective of their social background. That is, if you are offering the same kind of teaching, learning and socialization experience irrespective of their social background, this is not contextual education, and this is not something that CBSE is suggesting. Therefore, this is also incorrect. Now the second option, which says that be an active participant in group work and learn social skills. This is absolutely correct, because if you look at the concepts of progressive education, there is a lot of importance given to group work and social skills and socialization. Therefore, option 2 is the correct answer here. Which of the following situations is illustrative of a child-centered classroom? Which means, which of these options is an indicator of a child-centric classroom? A class in which the teacher dictates and the students are asked to memorize the notes. So this is a teacher-centric classroom. And here there is rote learning that is happening because students are just memorizing something. So this cannot be a child-centric classroom. A class in which textbook is the only resource that the teacher refers to. Now this again is subject-centric, because here textbook is the only learning that is being used, and there is a lot of learning that happens outside the textbook and outside the classroom as well. Therefore, if you are using only the textbook as the learning or the teaching resource, then this cannot be child-centric. And a class in which behavior of students is governed by the rewards and punishments that the teacher would give them. So this is probably behavioristic training, or just we are using rewards and recognitions to mold the behavior of the students. And this cannot be child-centered, because children are not naturally behaving the way that they should. The rewards and the punishments are making them behave in a specific way. So this cannot be child-centric. And option 3 says that a class in which students are sitting in groups and the teacher takes turns in going to each group, which means that children are sitting in groups and collaborating with each other, and there is peer learning that is happening, and the teacher is taking turns in going to each group and interacting with all the students. Therefore, this definitely is indicative of a child-centric classroom or a child-centered classroom. And with that, we will conclude this video. If you have any questions or feedback, please post them in the comment section below, and the rest, you know what you need to do. So I'll see you again very soon in the next part of this video series. Till then, take care, stay safe.